Welcome to Coach's Corner with Coach Eric Strothers.
Welcome to Coach's Corner with head basketball coach Eric Strothers. I'm Katina Rankin. This show will offer insight from the head basketball coach himself and take Tougaloo fans behind the scenes of Tougaloo basketball. With that being said, let's begin, or should I say, let's strap. Hey, Coach.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Let's talk about this historic year. Tell me all the wins that you got and the records that you broke.
Well, we had a 32-2 record, which was historical. With the wins, we went to the Elite Eight. We finished 14-0 in conference play, and if you add the 3 wins in the tournament, so it'd be 17-0 in conference play. And then I talk about the Elite Eight, 32 wins, 17-0, and first team to ever go 32-2 at Tougaloo.
How do you feel about that being a first-time head coach?
I feel really good. I mean, now I don't have room to go up, but I have a lot of room to fall off. So we preparing to have another great season. We lose some great players, but I feel really good about the season. I'm real happy about our play, about our coaching staff, and about just being at Tougaloo.
Do you have a favorite moment from the season?
My favorite moment from the season was probably when we won the championship, the tournament championship. Andre, the guard that plays for me, hit the shot, made one free throw and won. So that was probably the most highlight I had this year with Tougaloo.
Let's talk about your players. Your star, Lil Cam, as I've heard some of the players say, Cameron Copeland. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, Lil Cam, you talk about a great player. Anytime you can be player of the year in our conference 2 years in a row, let's tell you how great he is. He's a great player, he's a great ball handler, a great shooter, but also he's a great leader. You want to have him on the court when things are going bad. When things are going bad, he kind of calms the situation down and really is a good player. And he calms everybody down, and sometimes he calms me down.
What makes him a good player?
Makes him good because he can shoot. And his leadership, just leadership, leading the team, know when to shoot, know when to pass, know when to take over the game. That's what he done for me this year. For the last 2 years, he know when to take over the game. So you don't have good players like that most of the time, that he know when to take over the game.
Let's talk about Big Cam, because you have another Cam.
Yeah, Big Cam is one of my favorite guys. He's a big guy. He's real athletic. He can get to the basket anytime he get ready. We throw him a lot of lobs, a lot of alley-oops. And his personality is just up and down, and I like that. One day he come in pouting, the next day he's upbeat. So he's back and forth. So I learned how to handle him, and he's one of my favorite guys.
Okay, and then I also want to talk about Trajan Fielder.
Trajan Fielder is
always hitting threes. That's what I remember about him.
Yeah, you got to know where he's at all times. That makes Lil Cam a better player too, because you got a guy like Trajan that can hit shots from anywhere, and you got to make sure you know where he is, so you can't never help off him, because as soon as you help, and Lil Cam will find him, and he just hits shots, and he's a good guy, and he's fun to be around, got a good personality. So he was one of the reasons why we got what we got.
Okay, so you have some other players that are leaving, because the 3 that I mentioned are leaving. They're seniors.
Right.
Who else is leaving?
Well, we got Darryl Jones. Darryl Jones was our big guy inside. I stay on him more than anybody. I think they think that I don't like Darryl, but he is my favorite player. Next to Antwan Bean, Darryl Jones, I stay on him the most because I was an inside player. He was an inside player, he was a post player, which I was a post player. I like running the offense through Darryl Jones. So we ran a lot of offense through him. So when we come out, we go right to him. We go inside, and he's pretty good in there.
Okay. And so tell me about Bean.
Antwan Bean he's the guy that was my starting point guard last year that led us to the championship when Coach Billups was the head coach. And we had a really, really good relationship. We talk on and off the floor a lot. And he brings a different element to Tougaloo basketball. His leadership, his toughness, and then he has a personal relationship with me. So I hate to see him go, but I know we got all these seniors and we got to let them go. But those 5 guys was really the backbone of Tougaloo basketball.
So I'm sure that recruiting is in full gear because you are losing so many seniors. Can you tell me what you look for in a recruit?
Well, right now, what I do is, and people don't know, I use my players to recruit for me. Since we don't have the funds and where we can go and do some things and fly here, see a player, bring a guy in, I give my players, that's one thing, I really don't want to give my secret away, but I will this time because I'm talking to you. But what I do, I get my players to recruit for me. So like Darryl Jones brought a really good guard in for me named Darian Pierce, that he started for me for a long time, but he recruited him for me. Cam does a lot of recruiting, but the main one that do the most recruiting is Big Cam. Big Cam knows everybody. So Big Cam, he knows mostly all the players, so he do a good job. And then Trajan, you know, from his hometown, he goes back and talk to the guy and say, hey man, come to Tougaloo, come play for Coach Strothers, come play for Coach Billups. They can win you can win championships. So I use basically my players to help me recruit. And then of course, you know, in my career, I think my best accolade is recruiting. I think I can recruit better than anybody that I go up against. So, you know, when I was at the previous schools, I brought player of the years into to colleges. So my big thing, I look for guys that can be player of the year in the conference.
So you talked about one thing that makes you a good coach, and that's recruiting. What makes you a good head coach?
Well, right now, what makes me a good head coach, I manage. This year I had to manage about 30 personalities. So, you know, if you're a good coach, you got to be a good manager. So what I did, I managed the team, had to manage the Cam personality day to day, Big Cam personality day to day. And you know, I called Darryl Jones Taco, and you got to manage him every second of the day. So it's tough when you're a head coach. And then, you know, your manager, you have to manage study hall, you have to manage the weight situation. You got to managing the academic situation. Then you have to manage your assistant coaches and managers. And then, you know, you got scheduling, you got practice, you got weights. So as a head coach, you got to manage everything. So that was different this year for me. And I learned a lot from being the first year head coach.
So we could talk about Taco and why we have to manage him every second of the day, but we won't because this is your show, and so we're going to focus it on you.
Right.
I want to talk about your assistant coaches. Tell me about them and what makes them great.
Well, when you talk about Thomas Billups, you're talking about one of the greatest coaches. He's the GOAT, you know, when you're talking about coaching. You know, he done won 10, 11, maybe 12, you know, high school titles, championships. And then before I got there, the year I came in 2018, he had just won the GCAC. And then you're talking about last year, he as the head coach, he had just won another title, and I stepped in and I was thinking, wow, can I follow in his footsteps? But I knew I was built for it, so I didn't have no problems in stepping right after him. And we always say, you know, where you got a Kobe, you need a Shaq. Where you got Batman, you need Robin. So Billups was Batman, I was Robin, and he was Kobe and I was Shaq. So we just match our relationship together, and we do a lot of good recruiting. He's a great recruiter too. I'm a great. So we both recruit. We bring in great players, and we kind of mashed it together, and we mashed that system together. Then when you talk about Coach Neal, you know, Coach Neal is kind of like the organizer. He organized it. You know, he kept me organized all year. And he's great in that, and he's coach. I call him Coach Neal, but he's Dr. Neal. So he brings a lot to our program, organized, getting us going, and preparing things for us to go on trips, and even going into practicing. Then you got Coach Stevenson, that he's good with the players. You know, they come to him, they ask him for things. Say, Coach strut too hard on me over here, and he'll come back and tell me, well, I'm a little too hard on him, maybe I'm too soft on this player. But I got a great staff, and they did an outstanding job in helping me in my first year as a head coach.
So I want to talk about this because this is something that I saw and observed at some of the games, is that you begin and end them with prayer. Tell me why, and why that's important to you personally and collectively as a team.
Well, as a head coach, you have to evaluate everything. And first of all, you got to have a vision. And once you have a good vision, then you can prepare for what you want to plan. But before anything happens, you got to put God in it. So one thing I learned from my father, You start with God and you end with God, and you're going to be very successful in whatever you do.
And something else that I noticed and that I've heard from asking people about you is that academics, very important. So you enacted a few programs in your basketball program. Tell us about those.
Well, when I first got into coaching, I didn't know a lot about the coaching part and the recruiting part of it, but so they put me over the academics part of the program. So that's why I got my first start. I was a first-year coach, assistant coach, and basically I just ran the whole academic program. So that's my love. First of all, I want the kid to get an education, a good education, and I want them to graduate. So that's the number one priority when you talk about coming to Tougaloo basketball. That's our number one priority. Basketball is probably 4th or 5th on our list.
I noticed that you set some of your starters down during games.
Yeah, well, most of the time when I set a starter down, most of the time they have missed study hall, or they have came to practice late, or they have done something in the classroom and missed some class, or a teacher called me or a professor called me and say, well, he missed class or he didn't turn in his assignment, and then I send him down and I the next man up, and they know that, so they make sure they go to class, they make sure they go to study hall, and they make sure they on time for everything we do.
I talked to a couple of the players and they say that you start early with them. Tell me about when you actually begin working the players out and when you end with practice.
Yeah, you talking about our practices, or you talking about our preseason conditioning?
All of it.
Okay. Well, I be on time, and I like perfection. You know, so somebody said you can't never be perfect, but we strive to be perfect at Tougaloo. So my whole campaign this year was I wanted to lose no games. I wanted to have a purpose season, and I wanted to win the national title. So when you do things like that, you got to have a plan in place. My plan was I'm gonna start early and I'm gonna leave late. You know, and my players picked up on that, and we conditioned a lot, and we repetition was the key to our success. So we repetition a lot, and we had great success.
Okay, so a lot of people at home are probably wondering, and those that are listening via radio are probably wondering, why do you have a news person on to talk about sports? Well, I'm going to fill you in because we want people to know exactly who Eric Strothers is as a person and not just as a coach, right? So if you would, Coach, take us back, tell us where you're from, and tell us some interesting facts about your childhood.
Well, I'm native from Vicksburg, Mississippi, and in fact, I come from a very good home. My mother and father raised me right, and I got a lot of family values that I use in my everyday life, you know. And I'm a repetition guy. I probably do the same thing every day. You know, I get up in the morning, I come to practice, I walk probably 2 or 3 miles before practice start, and then once practice over, I could lift weights. And that's my repetition. I've been doing it all my life, even when I came through Vicksburg, and I was a football player. And I wanted to play football in college, but that didn't work out. So I was able to play basketball at Jackson State, and I've done pretty well. When you talk about making the Hall of Fame at Jackson State, I think that's a special deal, and you're making the Hall of Fame in the SWAC. I think that's a special deal. But I tell everybody, it didn't come easy. It came with hard work, which I learned from my parents. And they were middle class people, but they did it with hard work. And I try to instill that into the team. I try to tell them the same thing that I'm doing, I want them to do it. Because if you have hard work, you're going to have some success.
So I heard this interesting little story that your first job that your father got you was one that you really didn't want, but then there was a lesson behind it. Can you share it?
Yeah, I'll share it with you. My first job was, I thought I was going to be working with the mayor in Vicksburg in the office. So I dressed, I had my jeans, my Adidas shoes on, had a nice shirt. I'm going to have an office job because I was some kin to the mayor at the time, Mayor Walker. And I thought I was going to have a desk job. And then all of a sudden, I'm on this big dump truck. And we ride, and I said, we rode for about 30 minutes. I said, I can just ride around all day, but we stopped, and we picked up 2.5 tons of asphalt. And then I was filling potholes. That's what I was doing. I was filling potholes. I was up on top of a dump truck with a diesel can with some shovels in and rakes. And what we do was stop, and we was fill the potholes in the street. And I was so mad because I had on my good shoes, and my shoes were melting. I didn't have on a hat, and it was about 100 degrees outside. And I was just so mad with my father. I didn't know what to do. I said, what have he done? So when I got home, the first time I ever walked in and didn't speak to my father, and I just went to my room. He came and said, son, don't you never walk past me and don't speak. He said, you don't have to go back to that job, but I just want to teach you a valuable lesson. If you don't go to school, you don't get an education, this is something that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. So that was a big lesson for me.
Another interesting story that I heard that you picked up some of your morals and character from your dad is how hard he worked and even entering the military early.
Yes, my dad was a very hard worker. During the time he joined the Army, he was about 16 years old. He lied, and he was 16, and he joined the Army and just moved his age up 2 years that he was 18. But back then, I think the Great Depression was happening. He had no job. He had really nothing to eat, so he joined the Army, and he was successful in the Army and got back through it. But on his way back home, they didn't treat him right. You know, they didn't, let him ride the bus and things of that nature. So I got some of that from him.
So in other words, don't tell you no because you find a way to make it a yes?
Yes. Yeah. Well, when the door closes, I find a way around it. I don't, as I say, I don't kick doors in. I find a way around it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good little quote. Okay, so let's talk about Mom. Mom was a school teacher?
Yeah, my mom was an educator. She taught at Vicksburg High, and she was an outgoing. She was a very loving mother, but she preached education, and she didn't care about the sports part of what I was doing. She just cared about me passing high school, going to college, getting a master's degree, and on and on. So she was just very supportive on the academic side.
So speaking of academics, she went to Alcorn State, but your father said you could not go there or you could not enter the military.
My father, once I got to the 12th grade, and my father was a big W.C. Gordon fan. So, W.C. Gordon coached in Vicksburg and worked with my mother before he took the job at Jackson State. So the whole time I was playing football, when I was little, we used to go watch W.C. Gordon play. When I was a little boy, my dad would take me to all his games because my father was a W.C. Gordon fan. And then once he got to Jackson State, he said, son, you're going to go to Jackson State and play football. And, I worked at Alcorn. I worked in the summer program down at Alcorn with Dr. Powell, Dr. Russell. So that was what I did. I worked in the upper bound program down at Alcorn. So I thought I was going to Alcorn, but my daddy said, no, you're going to Jackson State. So once I got to Jackson State, I found my way.
Yeah, but that's an interesting story because you grew. You had like this really big growth spurt, and then you ended up playing basketball from a bet, I believe it was?
Yeah.
All right, Dare?
Yeah, so this is what happened. Once I got to Jackson State, I had a couple of friends. I had really good friends, Harold Givens and Michael Brown, and that was my roommates, and they bet me, and Tony Parker was one of my roommates. So they bet me that I couldn't make the team, but I grew from my 11th grade year, I was 5'8". So my senior in high school, I was 6 feet. But on my way to college, I went from 6 feet to 6'7". So all my friends were 5'10", 5'9", and now I'm 6'7", 6'8". So they dared me, they bet me that I couldn't make the basketball team. And I went out, and the rest is history.
And you really just played a few games of basketball when you were in high school. Tell me about that.
Yeah, high school was all football. I played football from the 9th grade to the 12th grade. And then my senior year, once I got to 6 feet, the principal at the school, which was Principal Dent, he asked me to come on out and play a little basketball. And I went out a couple games, got hurt, got hit in my eye. And I said, well, I never got hurt in football, but as soon as I played basketball, I got hurt. So I just stopped playing basketball, and I just focused on my grades, and then I just went to Jackson State, and then I ended up walking on to Jackson State.
We're going to talk more about that in a moment, but a little birdie told me that you used to play baseball.
Yeah, well, I played baseball in my early years, like 5th through 7th grade. I was a really, really good baseball player. I think I was better in baseball than I was football, and my worst sport was basketball. So I just took on basketball and made basketball work for me. But I was a really good baseball player.
Why didn't you pursue it?
Just a bore. I thought baseball was very boring. When I wasn't pitching, if I wasn't pitching, I was probably playing out center field or I was probably playing left field, and that was boring out there. So it was boring to me. So I just stopped playing baseball. My father was a really loved baseball. He played in the triple something in baseball. He was the first baseman. So I really wanted to play first baseman and play baseball for a little while until I figured out baseball was really boring.
So even though this is your show, you are trying to be humble, because I'm going to take you back, and you said you were pretty good when you walked on to that team at Jackson State. You actually became MVP your junior and senior year, correct?
Yeah.
Tell me about the records that you broke there and that historic moment for the team.
Well, actually, when I played at Jackson State, I was a walk-on, and there was some pretty good players on the team. You talking about? I came up at a time when Coach Stockman had just took over for Coach Prince. So I played 2 years for Coach Prince, and then I played 2 years for Coach Stockman, and doing so, I got better and better every year. So I just took on. I watched guys how they play, and then I just played my way. I got bigger, I got stronger, I got in the weight room, and so I was able to dominate my position at Jackson State as the forward. But I had some really good players that was around me that made me really good. And you're talking about my teammate Robert Carter. He was during that time he was 6'9", about 270. So he was a big center, and he had long arms, and he probably was in the top 20 in blocking shots. So he was big, so they had problems guarding him, and then that made the way for me. Then you had Lindsey Hunter, then you had Craig Charles on the other end that could really shoot, and then you had John Taylor that was a really good point guard. Now his son Wes Taylor plays for me right now. So during that time, they made me really good. So I say I was a decent player, but the players that was around me made me really good player.
All right, any of those teammates in the Hall of Fame?
Not yet. well, Lindsey Hunter is in the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, Lindsey Hunter is in the Hall of Fame.
So that's the reason why I say it's your show and you're being humble.
Yeah, well, Lindsey Hunter is in the Hall of Fame. So they made me pretty good.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about Coach Billups a little more, because a lot of people don't know that Coach Billups actually coached you in football, not basketball, but football. Right. And now you two are together as basketball coaches. How ironic is that? From the gridiron to the court.
All right. Well, a lot of people don't know Coach Billups when he was, you think he mean in fights now, when he was younger in his 20s, man. Coach Billups could walk in the gym, and everybody would sit down and be still. All you had to do was walk in, and everybody just sat down and was just still. So he coached the junior high team, and Coach Billups had the junior high team, and a couple of my friends played, David Anderson, a couple more guys that was really good basketball players. But his team in junior high, they was 48-0. They was 48-0. They lost one game, and Coach Billups, back then you could put the powder on people, right? Man, he had them guys smoking. For one loss, I said, no, I can't play basketball for him, but I ended up playing football for him, and he was my position coach at Vicksburg High School. And then we just stayed in contact the whole time. When I played at Jackson State, I talked to him. When I played there, I talked to him all the time. He kept on encouraging me, told me what to do, how to do it, taught me to get big and strong. And then once I started coaching at Jackson State, he had moved to Lanier and was doing great things there. And I would call him, and he would call me. We would change different things that we should do to make players better. And I would bring my players over to his gym, and we would play them. And so Lanier players used to beat us sometimes at Jackson State. That's how good at high school players he had. So as I trickulated through my career, we always stayed in contact. So when Valley said that they want me anymore, he called me right away and said, you should have been with me in the first place. So we talked about building a program, building a dynasty at Tougaloo, and that's what we talked about before. Well, before he hired me, and he said once he gets to a certain stage, he was gonna stop and let me take over. And he said, "Well, you all right?" I said, "Yeah, Coach, I'm okay with that because I wanted to be a head coach anyway." So Coach said, they say when we win it again, I'm gonna stop and turn it over to you, and we're gonna go from there. And I'm gonna be your assistant coach, and I'm gonna help you.
So actually, I did my research. I did my research. So
Okay.
I talked to Coach Billups, right?
Okay.
And so I asked Coach Billups, what makes Eric Strothers a good coach? And how can he come in his first year as a head coach and break all these records? One guess at his response.
Hard work.
He said he's just like me.
Yeah.
Are you just like Coach Billups?
We are alike in a lot of ways. But we don't have the same coaching style, but we are alike in a lot of ways. We work really hard. You talking about recruiting, Pat? You talking about recruiting? I listened to him on the phone, and he sounded like me talking to a recruit. Or he get a recruit in the gym. We kind of work hard. We just like each other, but we just got different styles of getting the point across.
What do you want people to take away from the show as they watch?
I just want them to learn about me, to learn about my coaching style. I want them to learn about Tougaloo and the players that we bring into Tougaloo. And like I say, to go 32-2, you got to be doing something special, and you got to bring in special kids in, and then the fans, the Tougaloo Nation, man, came out and supported our team. That's what made us a great team this year.
So, is the same thing that made you a Hall of Famer the same thing that makes you a great head coach?
Same thing. I always say, one thing about me, I'm a repetition guy. I do the same thing almost every day. I wake up, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, I'm gonna get ready, I'm gonna go to work, I'm gonna check my email, then I'm either lift weights or I'm gonna either get on the treadmill. And then my day starts from there. And then from there, I think about every day I start my day as a new day, like I got a bonus day. So when I wake up, I'm into my bonus life. So I take my bonus life and make a good life with my bonus life. So everybody say, why are you smiling and always happy? Because God has been good to me.
I think that's perfect. A perfect way for people to be introduced. Okay, so tell me something that no one knows about you except Eric Strothers, if you really want people to know who Eric Strothers is.
Well, that's a trick question. And,
I wouldn't dare ask you a trick question on your own show.
I'm a genuine guy. You get Eric Strothers, you get the same person every day. You don't get a different Eric Strothers. Sometimes they get different players. My players can tell you right now, I come every day with the same energy, with the same energy every day, and that's me.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then so you look into the camera and give them the stare down because your players say you know how to give this stare down that makes them get in line. Just joking with you, but they did say that you have the stare down.
The stare I give them is that you want to come sit on the bench. Yeah, and the thing about it, I remember Taco was playing in the game this year, and Darryl Jones, he was saying, Coach, they playing so hard. They fighting and scratching and biting. I said, well, they ain't scratching and biting over here. And he said, what you mean? I said, this bench, they ain't scratching and biting. You can sit down or you can play. He said, and I gave him that stare, and he went on back out there, and he went to scratching and biting with them.
So ask you one time, can you look at that camera and give them the stare? Okay.
Join us next time and see who's in my Coach's Corner. I'm Eric Strothers along with Katina Rankin.
Thanks for joining us.